with us a dear friend, one of my very close friends from GSMC and then Sion Hospital, Dr. Gautam Pradhan. Gautam is an extremely talented gentleman who is not only a great radiologist practicing in Bethany Hospital at Thane and has his own private clinic where he does his ultrasounds and conventional radiographs, but behind all this radiology lies a very sensitive soul who is not only an artist, a singer, a photographer, a bird enthusiast of the feathered variety, and is very, very passionate about one of the iconic historic figures in Maharashtra, that is Chhatrapati Shivaji. All of us are fans of Shivaji and have been fed and brought up on stories of Shivaji. But it takes a different genre and a different attitude or a passion to really start writing a book about this person. Shivaji, as you all know, is a very sensitive subject politically also in our country, especially in our state. So attempting to write a book on him, whether it is authentic, whether you are sensitive about the feelings of people, what are you writing, whether there will be a backlash, whether there will be repercussions, how much romanticization can you do, how much liberty, creative liberty can one take, are all questions that a person who touches on this subject, I'm sure, will be thinking about when they start writing. So, with this short introduction, let me hand over to Gautam to tell us briefly what are his books about. He's written a trilogy of which two books are released, and he'll tell us more about them. So, over to you, Gautam.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thank you very much for inviting me on OrthoTV today. And good evening to everybody. Uh, as Sandeep just mentioned, I have written three books on Chhatrapati Shivaji. Actually, the third one is still being written. The first two have been published and they are available for sale. Uh, my brush with history started about 10, 12 years ago. Early on, I never used to like reading history, and in fact, in school, I used to hate history. But about a decade ago or so, I started reading Indian history, and then I got interested in reading Indian history. And since we live in Maharashtra, and since I am Maharashtrian, I started reading Maratha history before anything else. And Chhatrapati Shivaji has been a personality who has inspired so many generations before and will continue to inspire generations after us. And there are so many things to learn from this great person. And I was absolutely mesmerized when I read about his life from Marathi books. But when I read about Shivaji, I realized one thing very acutely, and that was that there are hardly any English books available for a general reader. There are plenty of history books which have been written in English, but a person who's not really interested in reading a history book, but would rather read something light or maybe in the historical fiction genre, or maybe a novel kind of a book, will probably not find too many books on Shivaji in the bookstores. And I began reading a book in Marathi called Shriman Yogi, which is a fabulous book written by Mr. Ranjit Desai. And I'm sure most Maharashtrians would have read or heard about the book at least. And it is such a beautiful book, and it kept me absolutely engrossed. It's a book about 1,000 pages in size, but it kept me engrossed right from the first page to the last page. And I realized that there is nothing in English to match this book. So unfortunately, Indians who do not read Marathi and who are non-Maharashtrian will not find a book of this kind to read about Chhatrapati Shivaji. And that's when the idea hit me that maybe I could, try and write a book and fill the gap. And that I started researching Shivaji's history sometime in 2010. But it was almost 2017. It was September 2017 when my first book was released. And so it took me 7 to 8 years to get the first book out. And the second book was released in 2019, last year. These are the books, actually. I would like to show the books to you. This is the first book, which is titled 300 Brave Men. And this is the second book, which is titled Lord of the Royal Umbrella. So what I have done actually is that I have divided Shivaji's life into three phases. Uh, uh, the first phase is from roughly 1641 to 1660. This is the phase when Shivaji is almost entirely sort of engaged with the Bijapur Sultanate or the Adil Shahi Sultanate. And he has hardly interacted with the Mughals. Maybe a few times, a few incidents, but he has hardly interacted with the Mughals at all. And the second phase of his life starts from 1660, that is after the death of Afzal Khan. And in that phase, from 1660 to 1674, he has interacted majorly with the Mughals, which is a very famous battle. I think most people must be knowing, when Baji Prabhu Deshpande, along with 300 very brave soldiers, defended the pass at Godkind, and which allowed Shivaji to escape from the troops of Adil Shah who were pursuing him. And the book is then named after that battle. So 300 brave men actually denotes these 300 brave souls who gave up their lives to save their king's life. The second phase of his life starts from 1660, and that forms the second book from 1660 to 1674. And it ends in 74 when Shivaji was coronated as Chhatrapati. And that is why the book is titled Lord of the Royal Umbrella, which is the exact English translation of the word Chhatrapati. And the third phase will start from 1674 and will go on till 1680 when Shivaji died. So that is the third book which I am currently writing right now. And what is special about the book is that these are not actual history books, but they are historical fiction, or you can say historical novels. So the history has been described in the form of a story. In fact, I've written the book in the form of various scenes, just like the script of a teleserial or a script
So
of
exactly. So if I may interrupt you here, when I read the book quite enthusiastically, my first impression was this is a screenplay for a movie. It was
yeah,
written like Mills and Boons or a James Hadley Chase.
yeah.
It had that feel of excitement, passion, and storytelling. So what I wanted to know from you was, how did you get into this writing? Because I don't think creative writing comes easily. I think people do courses, people do degrees, they acquire professional expertise in writing books. How does a radiologist who's looking at pregnant tummies suddenly start writing a historical fiction?
Uh, well, actually, I've always had a leaning towards the creative side. I mean, my dad was an artist; he was an architect, and I have inherited a bit of art from him. And I also love to read and write as well. But the only thing was that I had never explored this side of myself. I had never tried to actually sit down and write something serious. But when I read the Marathi book on Shivaji, the book I talked about, Shriman Yogi, I felt that we must have something in the similar genre in English on Shivaji. And at about that time, I read a series of books by Alex Rutherford, who was a British author,
Yeah,
titled
the great Mughal.
Empire of the Mughals. So it's a series of
Yeah,
6 books, one book on each Mughal emperor.
yes.
And the books are fabulously written and eminently, I mean, absolutely enjoyable. And that's where I got encouraged that okay, this is the style in which I'm going to write, and that's how I got myself to actually penning the book.
Okay. So what happens is that all of us have a midlife crisis. Was this one of your midlife crisis, Gautam?
Maybe I don't know.
You got bored of radiology and said,
Actually,
because we do get, as orthopedic surgeons also, at 40 45, you are bored and tired of what you're doing routinely, and then you want to do something else. We dwell on it, we think on it, but to actually put it into action and bring out a
actually,
book, write it, get a publisher, sell it in crossword, and now I am I'm happy that it's available in USA in Barnes and Nobles also. So that's a
Yeah.
pretty big achievement.
Uh,
So how has that journey been? So just walk us through that.
Actually, I think most of us will go through this phase. Most professionals, especially, sometime in your 40s, you will feel that you have uh, maybe achieved most of what you could through your profession, or experienced most of what you could through your profession, and you really want to experience the world from a different angle, from a different side. I mean, for us doctors, most of our life is spent in our consulting rooms, and we the only thing that we hear people tell us is what they're suffering from.
Yeah,
They are, I mean, in short, people are constantly cribbing to us. That's the only thing
absolutely.
you can say.
Yeah,
And at some point, you feel, okay, I mean, we had enough of this. We need at least another dimension to our life. And I think everybody must have some other dimension, a hobby, or something, music, a musical instrument, or something which widens your scope and your experience of life. And uh, I felt it very acutely that I don't think I can get any more from radiology or medical practice, and that's where I decided that, okay, this is something I really want to do, and that is how I decided that I want to write now.
oh, okay.
Writing itself is a something which gives us a lot in return. I mean, trying to express what is in your heart. Most of us have immense respect for this one personality, Chhatrapati Shivaji. But
Yeah,
trying to express that respect, that love, that admiration in words in the form of a book has been a very emotional and absolutely excellent experience for me.
okay. So two questions. One is that did the character of Shivaji help you to bring out different facets of your own personality while you researched and wrote the book? One. So was it the character? One. Or it was just that you could explore your creative side other than the radiology and Ghasugiri that we did all our life. Uh, why not a musical instrument? Because I have found personally that even when I talk to Ashok, is that I am a lazy guy. I don't want to write anything. Typing, typesetting, correcting, editing is such a bore and mundane job that writing is, I think, a very difficult thing. Even writing a scientific paper, I can express it in words. I ask him, you give me a typist, I will speak it and you write it down. So getting down to writing, how was that?
Yeah, I mean, writing is a very
It's
the
a labor
process
intensive
itself.
job.
Yeah, the process itself demands a lot of hard work. Like this book of the first book is 600 pages. I wrote the first draft. I made nearly 4 drafts before I submitted it to the publisher, and after that we had 3 edits. So it's not a very easy job, and at times it does get on your nerves. But in the end, you have the end result in front of you. You know that something which you have created, and that something is going to be up on the shelves in a bookstore, and that is the reward you get. Uh, as far as hobbies are concerned, I think you could roughly divide hobbies into two groups: the active hobbies and the passive hobbies. The passive hobby would be, so people like to read. I like to read. I like to listen to music. I like to watch movies. And these are something passive. It doesn't demand you should do something active. You just have to sit and experience what somebody else has created. And the other kind of hobby is an active hobby, and that active hobby, you actually try to create something. So you learn a musical instrument, or you learn to sing, and you sing, record your songs, or you write a book, or you cook, different dishes, or whatever it could be. So I think every person should have at least one active hobby. It immensely enhances your personality, for sure.
So about the character, because when you write about an iconic figure like Shivaji being politically sensitive, how far were your liberties that you could take with romanticizing, making it a novel, a screenplay, and being historically accurate as far as possible? Because, as you know, we celebrate his birthday 2-3 times, depending on who's celebrating it.
Yeah. So writing about Shivaji, especially when you're sitting in Thane, in Mumbai, in Maharashtra, is a very difficult job, because you have to be absolutely correct about the facts, historical facts. You cannot go wrong, and you cannot take too many liberties either. I mean, you would want to portray the person absolutely as a person. Like I wanted to, you know, write about Shivaji in first person. I have done it in the first book, but I was advised by a lot of experts that, in the second part after 1660, do not write just Shivaji, write Shivaji Raze. In the third book, after which is after his coronation, do not write even Shivaji Raze or Maharaj, write Chhatrapati Shivaji. So, there are a lot of these restrictions. Either you, as a creative person, as an author, I wouldn't have wanted to do it, but you have to do these things. And what I have done is that I have kept my books absolutely true to history. Although the description is my own, innovative, I have kept the book absolutely correct as far as the historical facts are concerned, and that is why there is no place where people can really, take objections. I have not sort of gone into any controversial topic. There are so many controversial things about Shivaji's history, but I have not gone into any of these controversies, and so I've kept my book absolutely neutral from all points. And uh, yeah, I mean, as I read about Shivaji and as I wrote about him, I sort of lived through every experience, every incident. Like before writing an incident, I used to sort of play that incident over in my head, as if I'm trying to play a movie in my head. And then
So,
I
so
would,
did you visit those places, Gautam, actually, physically?
some of them, not all of them, like I haven't been to Raigad really, but I have visited a few places. I've been to Simagad, Pratapgarh, I've been to Shivneri, I've been to, Panhala side, but I have not visited most of the places. The thing is that you don't really have to visit every place if you want to write about the person. What I was interested in was trying to bring out the person's story, the person's life story, and mm, uh, but I did live through each incident in my mind, and literally. When I was writing the incident about Pawankind, the Battle of Pawankind, I cried. When I was writing the incident about the death of Shivaji's wife, I cried. I mean, it has been very emotional. And whenever what I do is that whenever I try to write about a certain character, I try to put myself in the person's shoes, in that character's shoes, and try to emote it myself. Try to think out what I would what I would say. Like if I'm writing about Afzal Khan, and I would put myself in his shoes, and then try to find out what he would say to Shivaji in anger. So that is how I have been creating my book. So it has taken a long time, but it was well worth it. All this, yeah.
I think that comes out very well in your book, because most of the events, when there is a conversation between the protagonists, it is like a conversational thing that you would have on a day-to-day basis. It's not uh, historic. Like you said, it's not as if you're reading a history textbook. It's like you are seeing a movie screen play happening. So, did you really write it so that
Yeah.
somebody makes a film on it? Hello?
Well, that that has been on the back of my mind, but yeah, that has been. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes,
Can you hear me? Yeah,
yes,
that has
yes.
been at the back of my mind. Yeah, that has been at the back of my mind that it's ideal to create a web series or a serial, but it's not particularly written for making a serial. But yeah, it could suit a serial very well.
So Many a times when you read history, I do read a lot of history, see a lot of historic serials also. You always wonder whether this was all genuine, authentic stuff, because history, as you know, gets distorted with every telling over the years. Maybe what Bhagavad Gita was original over 20 centuries or 10 centuries. Everybody adds, deletes, subtracts, glamorizes certain parts. So what we see today is not really what might have happened. So, did you try to actually go to the source? Did you refer to some Bakhars or maybe Sardesai's notes, or the actual? Did you go to those institutes and read those historic documents to verify, or it was a hand-me-down sort of a thing?
No, I have referred to mostly to original sources, and as you said, the Bakhars. Then there is a book, there is a poem called Shiv Bharat, and there are a lot of records from the Mughal courts, Adil Shahi courts, and there are letters from Shivaji's office, from Shahji's office. There are letters from Jai Singh's office. So all these original sources are available now thanks to the internet. You get everything on the internet. You don't really have to go to too many libraries. But I used to go to the Itihas Sanshodhak Mandal in Pune, BISM, and I have visited there to look for books which are not available on the internet. And yeah, most of the things have been taken from original sources. Although I have referred to history books by 20th century authors as well, but original sources forms a big part of my reference material.
Okay. So, once you wrote the book, how hard was it to find a publisher really? Because one part is writing the book, getting yourself to write it. Second part is to get it published. So, are there takers in the Indian market that more doctors can start? Because nowadays, when you visit Crossword, you do see a lot of, there's a whole Indian fiction section, and a lot of people are writing nowadays. And I'm seeing a lot of professionals writing. People have who are MBAs or who have come out of IIMs and or are doctors or are lawyers or are IT professionals have suddenly chucked their jobs and have started writing books. So is this an intellectual pursuit? How hard is it to sell a book? And what is the pathway? Suppose tomorrow I have to write a book.
Uh, for a new author, finding a publisher is extremely hard. I took more than a year to find a publisher. The reason is very simple. Most of the top publishers will get as many as 500 to 1,000 submissions every month, and they simply cannot go through all of that material in any case. So uh, it's a big sort of matka, or you can say a big stroke of luck if your manuscript gets picked by a good publisher. You can find some of the smaller publishers. Yeah, there are also options for self-publishing, but these options will generally not get your book into the big stores. If you want your book in the big stores, you have to find a really big-time publisher, which is very difficult. Fortunately, I found a publisher after about a year of hunting and submitting to various offices. Uh, Mm, and you're right that there's a big section on Indian fiction in Crossword and other bookstores today. But I think this trend was what you're saying, that a lot of people have started writing. This trend was kickstarted, I think, by Amish Tripathi. When Amish Tripathi wrote his first book and that sold like crazy. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people suddenly
I
thought,
think that's
okay,
the Shiva trilogy.
yeah, a lot of people thought that, okay, even I can start writing and maybe do this. So even today, if you see the Indian fiction section in Crossword, most of the books are on based on mythology. Either the stories from Ramayana or Mahabharata, or some other such story, which is very similar to what Amish Tripathi is doing. But I think people, Indians need to take up other aspects of Indian life also to write on. So
Okay.
there are so many aspects. I have picked Indian history. I will, I hope at least to write more books on some other, chapters from Indian history.
So you would like to stick to history?
Yes, and I would like to shift from fiction writing to non-fiction writing very soon. So let's see
Okay,
how it works out.
okay, okay. That's after your third book is published.
Yes, after the third book, correct.
Okay. And who is then your Indian fiction writer? Who's your sort of inspiration, idol, icon, or whose books you would like to read?
Uh, Indian authors. My favorite author has been Alex Rutherford, Dan Brown, Jeffrey Archer. These have been my favorite authors. And amongst the Indian authors, I have not really read too many books. I've read Amish Tripathi, I've read Chetan Bhagat, maybe a few other authors, but not really too many.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a radiology author.
Yeah, apart from the
So,
radiology authors.
so tell me, how hard was it on your family if you just disappear into your bedroom and are writing something which you don't want to show anybody? How did Deepali and the kids handle it?
Yeah, it's. I think it has been tough on them because I have taken time off from their share and given it to my writing, my books. So I'm really thankful to all of them for having, tolerated all that. But mostly I have tried my best to, write either very early in the mornings or sometimes at night. Actually, the first book, when I wrote the first book, I used to sort of take, time whenever I could get it, half an hour, maybe 1 hour, maybe half an hour in the morning, maybe half an hour at night, whatever was available, because those were the days when uh, I was extremely busy in my practice. Now I have sort of toned down my practice, so I get a little more time, but I was extremely busy in those days. So, it was like grab whatever
So
time is
Gautam,
available.
with this style of writing, how do you maintain continuity of thought? Because I cannot start a thought process, leave it after half an hour because I have to go and do some ultrasounds, and then come back at night and start thinking, "अरे सकाळी मी काय विचार करत होतो," and then pick up from there and still make it coherent. How does one do that?
Actually, that's the best part about historical fiction. The thing is that the story is already there in front of you, right? You don't have to invent a story. You don't have to think the story. You merely have to narrate the story. So that was probably what
It's more
was,
of a narration.
yeah, that it is more of a narration, but the way I have written it, it has also been creating the scene, creating the dialogues and all that. But at least the storyline is already there in front of you, right? So you don't
Yeah.
have to think new that way. So what I do is I write down a complete sort of, I do a storyboarding. I write down all the scenes that I would like to portray in the book,
Incorporate.
incorporate in the book. And so I go scene wise from that list. I go one scene after the one scene after. So
Okay. So you did create a script. It was screenplay.
yeah, it was yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's turned out nice. So, okay. So, moving on from that, any plans for the future? Harshad, Neeraj, do you want to ask Gautam anything? Ashish, I see you are here.
Yeah, Harshad can start first.
Uh, Mic is muted. Mic is muted.
So how important is it for you to discipline or give out certain time of your day for your writing? You said it was just a narration. I understand that. But do you really require to sit and dedicate certain time and then you will be able to give that output, or is it just on the fly?
It would be really nice if I could dedicate a certain time every day, but with the practice, with the medical practice, that is hardly ever possible. So, as I said, whenever I find free time, I sit with my books. The thing is to write historical fiction, and especially Shivaji. mm, I've I've spent maximum time in researching the book actually. So I actually read all the original source material plus the history books written by historians. Then I make my notes. Then I create a timeline. Then I create a sort of a storyboarding or a script, and then I start writing. So
Yeah.
it's a
Actually,
very
that was
long
my
process.
next kind of a question to you.
Hmm.
As to how did you research it? I mean, it's wonderful that you've written a book, and I'm very happy that we have a book where I can read Shivaji's history in English. I would have loved to read Shriman Yogi, but I'm not very conversant with reading Marathi. It has never, though I am a Maharashtrian, it has never been a language which I have really studied and read. My wife can read it very fast, but I can't. And after one page, it just gets too tiring for me. So it would be a good option for me. That's why I bought both your books today straight away. And very frankly, despite of you being publishing it in 2017, I haven't really heard of these books anytime before. I'm sure none of us have really heard of it. And that's a little complaint from my side. So why don't you promote, or what are the ways to promote such wonderful books written by doctors? How do you promote it?
Uh, it's something very similar to movies, Uh, I'll first. What is the first part of your question? I'll answer that.
First part, I mean, it was a rambling question. My first part actually was my first question was, how did you research it?
Research the book, yeah. So as I was saying earlier, that you if you really want to read history, you have to go down to the original sources. You can if you're reading a book written by somebody, you're actually reading an opinionated version of the history, correct? So if you want to read real history, you have to go down to the source books. So I have tried my best to go down to the source books as far as possible, and I have a huge collection of all that material in my cupboard, and I have an equal amount on my laptop as well. Most of it is available online. So as you said, the Bakhars are there, but more than the Bakhars, it is the records from the courts, Mughal courts, Adil Shahi courts, the letters from Shivaji's office. All these things are there for reference. You have a lot of records from the English English factory records, the East India Company factory records, and they form a huge part of the original source material. So all this has to be read. I read all that, and I made my own notes. And from there, it's once your notes are in place, then you start from there and you take it off from there. That's how we did it.
It's fascinating. You have all this information compiled in one place, or you have to compile it from various different sources?
No, you have to compile it from all different sources. It's crazy actually. When I actually sit to read, the reading part or the researching part, I have a table full of books everywhere. It's taking something from here, something from there, and then making your own notes. That sort of a thing.
Yeah, it reminds me of reading medicine from Harrison and putting notes in Golwala.
Absolutely, it was absolutely, absolutely reminded me
You
of
have a
third third.
mindset for that, taking information from various sources and finally drawing a conclusion which you would want to put on paper in your final exam.
Yeah.
As the second part is, how do you promote your books? I mean, why are the books not so well known even in the medical community?
So the thing, it's very similar to what happens in the movies, right? You're familiar with what happens when Salman Khan's movie or Amir Khan's movie comes out. What happens? Everybody else's movies and releases get blotted out, right? So the big people always want to put the small people down. So if you go to a bookstore, you will find mostly books by all the big publishers. You will find the Penguins, you will find the HarperCollins, you will find the Westland, and you'll find the Rupa paperback, Jeko, all the big names in Indian publishing. You will find most of it, and all the books by the small publishers will find some peripheral place in the bookstores. And secondly, they will not even keep them on the shelf for too long. In fact, my first book was on the shelf for hardly 2 weeks. After that, it was taken off, and it was very difficult to get it back on the shelf. And these people like the crosswords and the bargain book huts, they actually sell shelf space to the publishers. It's like renting a space on the shelf. If you want your book there, you have to pay them a rent for the shelf. something like that.
So Gautam, I'll just interrupt here and ask you, how much money did you spend out of your own pocket
I did
for
not spend on
for
the
marketing or publicity?
I did not spend on the distribution. The distribution is the headache of the publisher, and the only thing we can do is we can give them some suggestions about where you put the book, or which stores are good for these kind of books. But I did spend a lot of money on marketing. Like I've literally spent in lakhs. So it's creating the website, creating the doing the social media marketing. Uh, a lot of stuff has been done. Quite a lot got wasted also because I was not experienced when I started off. Now I'm a little wiser. Now I know how to spend my money more wisely and to get maximum output out of it. And so I feel that with the second book, the publicity has been better. In fact, the first book is getting noticed more after the second book's release.
Okay.
So that is also because I have learned a lot of things about
So,
social media.
so is it just a costly hobby or did you make some money also?
You don't really make money till you sell books. The numbers have to be in 5 or 6 figures. Before that, you will never make money. And selling in 5 or 6 figures is a huge achievement. It's very difficult to do it. The usual ratio is something like if 100 people actually see your book either on the shelf or on social media, one person will buy it. That's the ratio, standard ratio, 1:100. So if you want 10,000 people to buy your book, then you have to make your book, the picture of your book or the information of your book reach 10,000 into 100 people. That's how the equation is. So actually
Alright.
achieving this is very difficult. So it's a game of numbers. You will earn money only and only if you sell a huge amount of books. Otherwise, you will not.
Till then,
But
it's a
that
costly hobby.
till then it's a costly hobby. But that really not was not why I started doing this in the first place. I started doing this for myself, and I think to that end I have gained a lot.
Yeah, so that's money well spent. Ashish?
Yep.
So I got them. So I wanted to ask, I mean, did you start small, like by writing articles in newspapers? If someone has a liking for writing, but it doesn't know if it will be appreciated by anyone else other than writing some odd experiences. Most of the doctors, we have patient-related experiences or hospital-related real-life sort of incidences where they want to write what they learned, what they life lessons and things like that. So did you also go to the newspapers or maybe blogs and start that way?
Not really. The only thing that I had probably written before writing my book was the 10th standard essay in the English exam. I have not
माझा
written any.
आवडता राज्यकर्ता शिवाजी महाराज.
I have not written any articles in any newspapers before my book was published. I have done a little bit of extra writing after the books have been published, but it's still, I still find it very difficult to get to the newspapers. I have tried my best to get my book into the newspapers, and it is extremely difficult. Big names like Times of India and Hindustan Times, very difficult to get into them. So I'm still trying
not
that.
only, I mean, yeah, and these author fairs or literary fests which are there. I mean, did you attend any of those? Did they help? I mean, see, doctors don't have
No,
time for these, and it all
no, I
looks
have
very
not.
attractive. The author is going to come and he's going to read out the book, but we never gather around to go there and attend them.
The thing is, these events at the literary fest have to be organized by the publisher. On an individual basis, I don't think it will be possible. It has to be done through the publisher. So, as and when my publisher does it, I would be happy to go. But I have not yet visited any of these lit fests.
No, but did you attend anyone else's?
No, I have not. I have not. Though probably I will.
Did you get feedback from friends and family? Did you run your scripts by them, get some criticism, constructive or otherwise? Were there times where you said that ye nahi hone wala and other people boosted you, nahi, keep it going?
Yeah, actually the time frame was so long, started in 2010. When I started, even my family didn't know that what I was doing. It was just in my head. In fact, even I was not sure that I'm ever going to complete this. Actual writing of the book also took 2 years or maybe more than 2 years. So it was a very long time frame. There have been instances where I felt, "Kya bas, enough. I don't want to do this anymore." Uh, but mainly because it was very difficult to find quality time to sit with the book and work on it. Very often I would sit and then get disturbed. I would have to get up, and it would really sort of irritate me a lot. And so I thought more than once. I thought that I don't want to do this any longer. But after a certain phase, once you have done a sizable amount of the work, you feel ki no, you want to complete it now, come what may. It was good that I did not have any time restriction. I mean, in the sense that it was not as if I had to do this in 6 months or 1 year. I took as much time as I wanted, and finally got it out. It is now that, for the second book and the third book, for the third book especially, now I have a time frame to work, and I'm falling back miserably. So I again have a problem. Mm, yeah, these things happen.
Okay. So, any questions? Ashish?
I want to ask one.
Yeah.
So we spoke about how much you spend, but how much do these books actually give you back? Can it become a money-making business in the long run if you become a good celebrated author?
Yes, if you become a celebrated author, like people like big names like Salman Rushdie and all that, they must be earning really well. But you have to reach that level first. And as I said, it's a numbers game. Unless you sell a huge number of books, you will not make money, because publishers will generally pay you per copy sold. It will be a percentage. And the percentage is a very low percentage. I mean, it's like 7%, 8%, 10%, something like that. It is only the very senior names who will get more. So unless you sell a lot of books, you will not make money. And the other thing is, over a period of time, if you have a large number of your own publications on the shelf, then okay, the cumulative sales will fetch you money. But it's a process. It takes time. As a new author, it's very difficult. I mean, Amish Tripathi and Chetan Bhagat are probably rare instances where this has happened in the first book itself. It usually doesn't happen to anybody with the first book. Very difficult. Amish Tripathi is, I mean, I don't think anybody else will succeed as he has done with the first book.
Ashish?
So coming back to this thing about feedback, audience, and getting your first book in. So now with the advent of Kindle, Audible, and those sort of platforms where people don't necessarily buy hardbacks or they go for the soft copies or PDFs. Do you think it is easier for a doctor to get his thoughts across in the form of a monologue, a book, or something like that?
Absolutely. I mean, publishing Kindle books is very easy. You merely have to write it and write it in the required format, and upload it, and it becomes a Kindle book. So that's very easy. It doesn't require any money to publish a Kindle book, really. So that way it's become easy. And slowly, I think the printed books, the hard copies will slowly be phased out. Most people will read them on their laptops or their Kindles or on their cell phones. It will become that way very soon. The hard copies will go out of vogue, just like things changed from your audio cassettes to DVDs to now you have only OTT platforms. You don't have, nobody buys or makes CDs and DVDs anymore. That's going to happen to books very soon, I believe. And the other thing is that today the competition from the cell phone, from the online media is so huge that reading has taken a back step. And people, I mean, given a choice between a book and your Netflix, what are you going to choose? 9.5 of times out of 10, you're going to choose Netflix, right? Most people would. So the readership has gone down with the development of these OTT platforms, definitely.
But these Goodreads and other platforms which are there who give a book challenge, and I mean, like fountain pen enthusiasts, there are definitely book enthusiasts. We see a lot of doctors also having book clubs. You know, there is a WhatsApp group where they share books, they ask for books, reviews, and things like that. So I think the book will have a place. You know, I'm pretty sure,
I,
as
I,
there's
I
not
definitely
enough
hope
time to
so.
read a book.
No, I think it will have a place, Ashish, but it will be like that rare vintage. It won't be a across the counter drug. It will be a rare thing
Yeah,
that people are connoisseurs and they're. It's like opening a bottle of
right.
wine which is vintage or something like that.
Yeah.
You never
I
see
think that will happen eventually.
new,
Somebody who reads book and discusses will be ऐसा बहुत ऐसा पहुंचा हुआ चीज. आम आदमी नहीं करेगा वो.
Well,
new crosswords are not opening. Old crosswords are getting smaller. Bookstores
Yeah.
are getting smaller.
yeah.
Spaces where we used to go and enjoy are no longer available now.
Yeah. So Gautam, let me ask you final couple of questions. I think has life changed from Gautam the radiologist to Gautam the author? Did it make a quantum change? Did you have a whiff of celebrity status at all? In
No, not.
society, in the house, in your friends, in your batch? Do people look at you differently or they'll say, Ala Salat? Timber, timber, timber.
No, life has not changed that way, definitely. But I have got a lot of feedback from people who have read my books, and it's not just friends and family, but people whom I don't know from outside Maharashtra, from West Bengal, from Delhi, from a lot of people who have read books have sort of mailed me, and they have also put up reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. So it really you feel good when someone you don't know tells you that, you know, I read your book and I really loved it, and so it feels nice that way. uh, and celebrity status is still very far away.
We are all here to make sure you stay grounded. Naika? So can you share with us some feedback, some outstanding feedback you had both ways, as in criticism by some hothead who said that काही लिहिले तुम्ही शिवाजी बद्दल हे काय चाललंय, and somebody who said, wow, I didn't know this is how the story went.
Fortunately, it's been 3 years since my first book was published. Fortunately, I have not had a single bad review or bad criticism about my book so far. The lowest I have received is 3 stars on any platform. Most of them have given me 3, or most of them have given me 4 or 5. And nobody has got back to me and said that you have written crap, or, you know, this is shit. Most people have said good things. What I really liked was, you know, there have been people who are descendants of some Maratha families who were active during Shivaji's times, who have served Shivaji. The descendants of those families, you know, some of them actually contacted me. Like a few days ago, a person contacted me. His name is Dhatonde, and he is sort of descendant of Mankoji Dhatonde, who has been Shivaji's first commander in chief. So these kind of interactions sometimes, you know, give you a lot more than money can ever give you. And that person talked to me for a long time, and he thanked me for mentioning his ancestor in the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you really feel part of 400 years ago history.
Yeah, so that was a good experience, and I've had a few other experiences. People have called me, or they have sort of emailed me, and so these interactions are always good. Feel nice. Yeah.
So any more dreams for the future? Any plans? Which other character would you get into after Shivaji?
So as I said, history will still be the main thing I'll write about, and I will be shifting from historical fiction to non-fiction very soon. But I also want to write an out-and-out fiction novel, something like what Chetan Bhagat writes. Absolutely keep your cerebrum aside and just write for the Hindi movies, that kind of stuff. It would be fun, I think, because one thing is when I've experiences when I've written about Shivaji, you have to have a lot of control on your language. You cannot be liberal about your language. So writing a book like Chetan Bhagat, you can use all sorts of cuss words and just enjoy yourself, just go all out. I would love to write something like that. Yeah. So let's see what I can do in the future.
So which character would you choose? Historic.
From history? Oh God.
Yeah.
I don't know what I started researching on was Rana Pratap's life, and probably that will be the next one I will write on. But I don't know. I'm not sure yet. Let's see.
All right. So Ashish, Harshad, Neeraj.
Yeah, I think we have covered a lot. Yeah.
How are we on time?
Yes, we are perfectly on time.
Okay.
And we have covered a lot. So we thank Dr. Gautam Pradhan, and all of us will eagerly wait for his third book. When is it scheduled to be released?
Yeah, it's scheduled sometime in the middle of next year.
Next year. Okay.
That is if I manage to write it on time.
Okay. So that's still writing, and we hopefully all of us await. And when there is a book release of the third book, we will invite you again so that we can have something like another book club.
Okay.
With all of us again. So we
thank you so much.
We thank Dr. Gautam Pradhan, and we thank Dr. Sandeep Patwardhan for moderating this session very well. And we also thank Ashish and Arshad to be there with us. And Arshad, who has just bought these two books, and maybe he'll review the books very soon.
And Neeraj, you go and buy those books. Don't borrow them from Harshad.
We'll have a journal club on the book.
Yes.
We'll also share the Google Amazon link on our groups.
Yeah.
People can
please,
buy.
So
please,
Gautam,
if you get to read the books, please write some reviews on Amazon. And
Yes.
So one way is that you should get your radiology departments and your radiology associations to give that as a gift during their